In the summer of 2002, three teenagers, Mike, Anna, and Leo, decided to explore the abandoned amusement park known as Wonderworld, unaware of the chilling mystery hidden behind its rusted gates. When the friends vanished without a trace, the quiet town of Richmond was shaken to its core. 2 weeks later, police discovered something inside the park so shocking it sent waves of terror and paranoia through the community. What truly happened inside Wonderworld, and what dark secrets would the investigation uncover? Mike Thompson had spent the better part of his life learning to hide his scars behind a smile. At 16, he was the kind of kid everyone wanted around, easygoing, charismatic, always ready with a joke. But beneath that cheerful surface was a quiet pain that never seemed to go away. Mike's older brother, James, had vanished 8 years earlier, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions and an ache in his family's heart. Ever since then, Mike had developed a peculiar habit of tapping twice on his chest whenever anxiety crept in, like a silent ritual meant to calm his nerves. His closest friends knew better than anyone else how much he still hurt, despite his jokes and bright eyes. Especially Anna Coleman, whose clear blue eyes could see right through Mike's laughter. Anna was a thinker, a girl who had grown accustomed to mysteries, drawn to them ever since she could remember. At 16, her natural curiosity had turned into an obsession with conspiracy theories and unsolved cases. She had a special journal, frayed and worn, where she wrote down every strange detail she stumbled upon. Whenever lost deep in thought, Anna would chew lightly on the tip of her pen, a quiet sign that her mind was elsewhere. Leo Foster, slightly older at 17, was the third member of this tight-knit trio. Leo was the quiet observer, tall and lean, with a gentle demeanor. He spoke through photographs, capturing emotions that words could never reach. The Polaroid camera around his neck was like a lifeline, and his habit of shaking the photos gently, almost impatiently, reflected the calmness, intensity of his thoughts. Photography helped him cope with the turmoil of his parents' bitter divorce, offering him clarity in a way words couldn't. Single quotes did. The friendship among Mike, Anna, and Leo felt like something rare and untouchable. They understood each other's silence just as much as their laughter, their bond strengthened by shared secrets and long summer afternoons in Richmond, Virginia. That particular July afternoon in 2002, the heat had softened into a gentle warmth, and the sunlight cast golden glows over Richmond's sleepy neighborhoods. Mike, Anna, and Leo sat in Anna's backyard, sipping cold lemonade and leafing through old newspaper clippings Anna had collected obsessively. "Wonderworld," Anna began, tapping her pen against her lips as she leaned forward, blue eyes glowing with intrigue. Closed since 1994. Rumors of strange sightings, noises. Some people even say it's haunted. Mike shook his head, chuckling lightly to mask the small flutter in his chest. He tapped twice on his chest almost instinctively. "Haunted or not, sounds like an adventure," Mike joked, though his eyes betrayed a hint of discomfort. The memories of James hovered nearby, like an invisible shadow. James had talked about visiting Wonderworld once too, before he disappeared. Mike quickly shoved that memory aside. Leo flipped through Anna's notes, shaking his head in mild disbelief. "So, what exactly happened there?" "Nobody really knows," Anna said quietly, excitement mixing with caution in her voice. "A worker died on the roller coaster, the Cyclone. Some say it wasn't an accident. Either way, the park closed soon after." Leo raised his camera and snapped a photo of Anna's thoughtful expression, shaking the Polaroid in his hand as he spoke. "You think someone covered it up?" Anna shrugged, eyes brightening. "There's definitely something they're not telling us." Mike watched his friend's enthusiasm, his stomach tightening. But he hid his unease beneath another grin. Sounds like we've got ourselves a mystery. Let's check it out tonight. Anna and Leo exchanged eager looks, their curiosity overshadowing any lingering doubts. They planned quickly flashlights, snacks, and Leo's camera. Mike jokingly declared that they would either find ghosts or rats, but either way, it would be memorable. As the afternoon melted into dusk, the trio rode their bikes toward the outskirts of town. Wonderworld loomed ahead, its rusted iron gates creaking slightly, weeds and vines choking the entrance. The amusement park, once a colorful wonderland, now resembled a ghost town. The atmosphere shifted palpably as they stepped inside. It felt as if the world had fallen silent. Broken down rides, chipped paint, forgotten toys, and discarded popcorn boxes created an eerie landscape. A faded clown statue, its eyes staring blankly, watched over the decaying booths. Leo snapped a few photos, shaking each one softly, capturing the melancholic stillness. Mike walked cautiously, fighting back the persistent dread he felt rising in his chest. He tapped twice again, whispering a silent reassurance to himself. Anna scribbled furiously, her pen moving faster, capturing every strange detail. Her excitement was tempered by a growing tension in the air. "Guys, look!" Anna pointed toward the silhouette of a towering roller coaster, barely visible in the moonlight. "That's the Cyclone." It stood quietly ominous, twisted metal gleaming faintly under moonbeams. As they drew closer, an odd sound emerged, a low, metallic creak. They froze in place, hearts quickening. Leo raised his camera instinctively, capturing the unsettling image. Mike stepped ahead, forcing a brave front. "It's probably just the wind." But Anna's face paled slightly, her pen pressed anxiously against her lips. "It doesn't sound like wind," she whispered. They moved cautiously toward the coaster, their flashlights slicing through shadows. Suddenly, Mike froze. The first car of the roller coaster swayed slightly, as if someone had just stepped off. A chill rippled through them. "Maybe we should turn back," Leo suggested quietly, his voice wavering slightly. Mike swallowed, pushing away his fear. "We've come this far," he said firmly, though his hand unconsciously tapped twice again. Anna reached out, gripping Mike's arm gently. "Mike, are you okay?" He nodded softly, offering a weak smile. "I have to know," he whispered, knowing Anna understood without explanation. Step by cautious step, they ascended the worn wooden stairs, each creak echoing loudly in the silence. Leo snapped photos compulsively, each flash briefly illuminating their tense faces. The platform atop the ride was narrow and weathered, overlooking twisted rails disappearing into darkness below. Anna gripped her pen tighter, eyes wide. "There's definitely something wrong here," she murmured. Another sudden creak, louder now. The trio jumped, spinning around nervously, flashlights waving through the dark. The night seemed impossibly silent afterward. "Who's there?" Mike called out shakily, heart racing, his voice fading into nothingness. No response, only quiet rustling of leaves. Leo's hands trembled slightly as he lifted his camera again, capturing the tension in the air. "Maybe it was nothing," Mike said softly, not believing himself. Anna nodded uncertainly, her voice fragile. "Let's hurry." They carefully climbed into the seats, inspecting them warily. Mike's heart thumped painfully, memories of James pressing against him. Leo took a deep breath, carefully photographing the scene. Anna scribbled nervously in her journal, pen shaking in her fingers. Mike's flashlight suddenly flickered, dimming. Briefly, he tapped it roughly, feeling his anxiety spike. He glanced at his friends, seeing the fear reflected in their faces. A sudden metallic clang echoed, louder than ever, jolting them into panic. Mike whipped around, but saw nothing. His breathing grew ragged, hands trembling. "Let's get out of here," Leo urged, his voice barely audible. Mike nodded rapidly, scrambling out of the ride. Anna clutched her journal tightly, eyes wide. They hurried down the steps, flashlights bouncing chaotically. The darkness felt heavier now, pressing closer. Their footsteps echoed unevenly as they rushed toward the park's exit, panic overtaking them. Yet, as they reached the pathway, something compelled Mike to stop. He turned back briefly, staring at the cyclone, its outline stark against the night sky. Anna tugged gently at his arm, urging him forward. They stepped hurriedly into the deeper darkness, their figures fading into the shadows of Wonderworld. The oppressive silence settled once more, but behind them, unseen and unheard, a shadow stirred gently. Eyes watched carefully, hidden and patient, tracking their every move from within the darkness. None of them noticed, none of them realized how close the danger truly was, and none of them perceived that they had been followed from the moment they entered the park. The morning sunlight spilled into Mike's room, gently illuminating the walls covered with faded posters and childhood photos, but the bed remained empty, untouched. In the kitchen, Sarah Thompson stirred her coffee absently, eyes drifting to the clock every few moments. It was nearly 10. Mike should have been home hours ago. Sarah's heart fluttered nervously as memories of another empty bed haunted her thoughts. Memories of 8 years earlier, when her older son James had vanished without a trace. Her eyes blurred, anxiety forming a tight knot in her chest. She reached out, her trembling fingers brushing the framed photo of Mike and James on the countertop. Tears welled in her eyes, painful familiarity settling deep inside her. "Not again," she silently pleaded. "Please, not again." Across town, similar worry gripped Anna's and Leo's families. Phone calls echoed anxiously between households, each parent reassuring the other, but privately sinking deeper into fear. By noon, when no answers came, panic quietly settled over Richmond, spreading rapidly from neighbor to neighbor, house to house. By early afternoon, the Richmond Police Department was alive with urgency. Officers hurried past ringing phones, frantic parents, and rattling radios. In the midst of this chaos stood Detective Alan Cooper, middle-aged, tired-eyed, with a weary posture that spoke of a lifetime spent shouldering others' grief. Alan was no stranger to pain. Every missing child was a fresh reminder of his greatest failure, a case from nearly 15 years earlier, a boy he never found. "Alan, it's the Thompson kid," an officer said quietly, handing him the file. Alan felt an immediate heaviness in his chest. Mike Thompson James' younger brother. Alan remembered Sarah's haunted eyes when they'd failed to find James. He took a deep breath, gripping the file tighter. "I'll handle it," he said firmly. He started with the families. Alan carefully interviewed each parent, asking gentle but necessary questions. Sarah Thompson struggled to hold herself together, her voice shaking as tears slipped silently down her cheeks. "He knows not to do this," she whispered desperately. "Mike would never make me worry like this. Not after what happened to James." Alan nodded gently, seeing clearly the anguish she endured once again. He assured her, softly but earnestly, that everything possible was being done. Yet he couldn't ignore the heavy shadow of doubt lingering in Sarah's gaze, a doubt mirrored deeply within himself. Anna's mother handed Alan a worn journal, explaining her daughter's habit of documenting strange occurrences. Alan carefully flipped through the pages, unsettled by Anna's increasingly frantic handwriting as she described Wonder World Park. Leo's parents showed him recent Polaroids scattered across Leo's desk, images of the trio smiling, carefree, unaware of the darkness awaiting them. Alan pocketed one photograph, a haunting snapshot of three happy faces that now seemed painfully innocent. By late afternoon, the search concentrated around Wonderworld. Alan led officers past rusted gates now flooded with harsh daylight, stripping away the nocturnal mystery but amplifying the eerie sense of decay. Their footsteps echoed strangely among cracked concrete and overgrown weeds. Every creak and rustle seemed magnified in the unsettling silence. The faded clown statue stared at Alan blankly as he approached the park's main attraction, the roller coaster known as the Cyclone. Even in daylight, its twisted rails and rusted frame felt deeply sinister. Alan's heart quickened slightly. Instinct told him something was terribly wrong here. He carefully ascended the worn steps of the ride, examining each detail meticulously. When he reached the top platform, his eyes caught something unnatural. Nestled ominously in the seat of the front car was a blood-stained shirt Mike's shirt. Alan froze. His breath caught painfully in his throat. This wasn't simply a missing persons case anymore, it was something darker. He gingerly lifted the shirt, feeling a disturbing chill run through him. It was deliberate, purposeful, a silent message left behind. Word spread quickly through Richmond. Panic and speculation overtook rational thought. Rumors erupted, curses, ghosts, murder. The image of Mike's bloody shirt became a terrifying symbol of uncertainty, ripping open wounds that had never fully healed in the small community. The first leads quickly surfaced. Alan questioned Hugo Klein, the park's former owner. Klein was frail, his face gaunt and pale, haunted by the past. "You know why Wonderworld closed, Detective?" Klein's voice trembled. "Because some places are evil. They consume whoever sets foot inside." Alan regarded him skeptically, yet the genuine fear in Klein's eyes troubled him deeply. Randall Evans, a former employee dismissed after the 1994 tragedy, proved equally unsettling. Randall's muscular frame was taut with barely restrained anger. "They blamed me," Randall growled bitterly. But Klein knew the truth. He was covering something up, protecting someone. Alan pushed him carefully. Who was Klein protecting? Randall merely shook his head, his dark eyes filled with contempt. "Dig deeper. The truth is buried under years of lies." Both men raised Alan's suspicions, offering conflicting accounts and hiding clear truths beneath layers of bitterness and pain. By evening, Alan sat in his cluttered office, the walls covered with maps, photos, and notes, a physical representation of his restless mind. He leaned back, exhaustion pressing heavily upon him, but his mind refused to quiet. Something crucial was missing, a connection he couldn't yet see. His phone suddenly rang, shattering the heavy silence. Alan answered briskly, heart quickening again. "Detective Cooper," came a nervous voice, one of his officers. "You need to see this. We found footage from a security camera at Wonderworld. It's disturbing." Alan quickly drove back to the police station, mind racing, memories tangled painfully with present fears. Once inside, he approached the monitor, surrounded by officers watching in uneasy silence. "Play it," he said tensely. The grainy video footage flickered into life. Black and white images of Wonderworld appeared distorted, eerie, cloaked in shadow. Alan watched, heartbeat accelerating. Three familiar shapes entered the park cautiously. Mike, Anna, Leo. Alan's breath tightened as they moved deeper into the darkness. But then something else appeared, a vague silhouette lingering behind them, almost invisible at first. As the teenagers moved forward, the shadow followed silently. Ominously, Alan stared, mouth dry, dread forming an icy grip around his chest. The figure moved oddly, as if distorted, yet unmistakably human. It paused occasionally, observing them, patient and deliberate. Then the figure stepped briefly into clearer view beneath the pale glow of a distant lamp. Alan's blood ran cold. The stranger wore the unmistakable uniform of a Wonder World employee, identical to those worn nearly a decade earlier back when the park had closed. Alan's mind spun with horrifying implications. Was it Klein? Randall? Someone else entirely? He paused the footage, struggling to compose himself. Something deep and terrible had awoken in Wonderworld. His throat tightened painfully as he stared at the frozen image, reality twisting sharply. He forced himself to breathe, the room suddenly unbearably quiet. His pulse pounded in his ears as he realized that this case was far worse than anything he had faced before. Richmond was once again haunted by a darkness Alan feared he might not be able to defeat. His phone rang sharply again, breaking his grim contemplation. He answered, voice rough with tension. "Yes?" Alan barked. "Detective," came a hesitant voice. "We found something else on another camera. You really need to see this." Alan closed his eyes briefly, bracing himself for the nightmare to deepen further. "I'm coming," he whispered heavily, dread coiling within him. He hung up slowly, glancing once more at the disturbing image on the screen. When Alan saw the footage, his blood froze completely. The grainy video footage replayed on Detective Alan Cooper's monitor, each pass revealing details that deepened his unease. Richmond Police Station buzzed with nervous energy, detectives and officers clustering around the screen, watching silently, as if afraid that speaking might somehow awaken whatever lurked in the shadows of Wonderworld. Alan leaned closer, his eyes straining to discern the distorted figure captured by the park's security camera. It hovered at the edge of each frame, an indistinct blur moving silently behind Mike, Anna, and Leo. The figure wore an unmistakable uniform, a faded Wonderworld employee jacket and cap, identical to those worn nearly a decade earlier. Alan felt his skin prickle with cold dread. "Can you enhance the footage?" he asked urgently, his voice tight. The technician nodded and zoomed in, clarifying the grainy images slightly. It revealed just enough for Alan to see the figure clearly, standing behind the teenagers, watching, waiting. Alan straightened up, breath caught in his throat. Who or what had stalked these kids through the abandoned park? The video raised more questions than answers, intensifying Alan's frustration and anxiety. Word of the footage leaked quickly, igniting panic across Richmond. Neighbors whispered anxiously about spirits and curses, speculating wildly in supermarket aisles, coffee shops, and town squares. Every citizen seemed to hold their breath, waiting anxiously for news. Wonderworld became a dark legend once more, reigniting fears long buried. Alan dove into old files, driven by an obsession to understand. He visited the archive room late into the night, leafing through yellowed newspaper articles, each story more unsettling than the last. He found records of strange occurrences, unexplained power failures, sightings of shadowy figures, and finally the tragic accident on the Cyclone. None provided answers, only more dark ambiguity. His investigation led him next to Jenny Howard, James Thompson's former girlfriend. Jenny lived alone on a quiet street lined with aging trees and peeling paint. When Alan knocked, Jenny opened the door cautiously, her pale face illuminated dimly by the fading afternoon sunlight. "Jenny Howard?" Alan asked gently. Jenny nodded hesitantly, her delicate frame trembling slightly. Alan immediately noticed the intensity in her hazel eyes, an unsettling, restless gaze that shifted nervously. "I'm Detective Alan Cooper. May I come in?" Jenny hesitated before finally stepping aside silently. Inside, the house was dimly lit, the air thick with stale incense and a subtle, unsettling mustiness. Alan's eyes caught glimpses of walls plastered with faded photographs and newspaper Clippings, each one featuring James Thompson. "You were close to James," Alan said softly, carefully observing Jenny's reaction. "Yes," Jenny whispered, her voice fragile and distant. "He promised we'd always be together. He never should have left me." Alan felt an uneasy chill. "Jenny, do you know anything about Mike's disappearance?" Jenny shook her head slowly, her expression unreadable. "No, but James. He always wanted to see Wonder World. He talked about it constantly. He said it called to him." Alan's brow furrowed. "Called to him?" Jenny's eyes flashed strangely. "It chose him," she murmured softly, almost to herself. Alan studied her carefully, a growing discomfort gnawing at his instincts. "Jenny, did you ever go to Wonder World?" She looked sharply away. "It took him. That's all I know." Alan realized he'd get no clearer answers from her, not today. He thanked her gently, leaving with an even deeper sense of unease. Jenny's obsession, her fragile yet intense fixation on James, stirred suspicion in Alan's troubled mind. Meanwhile, tensions escalated in Richmond. Sarah Thompson's grief had turned to desperation. Unable to bear the uncertainty, she stormed toward Hugo Klein's aging house on the outskirts of town, demanding answers. Her fist pounded fiercely on his door until Klein finally opened, his tired, sunken eyes meeting her angry gaze. "What did you do?" Sarah demanded furiously, voice trembling with rage and anguish. "You know something, tell me." Klein shook his head weakly, shrinking away from her desperation. "I didn't hurt anyone," he protested feebly. "Wonder World took them, just as it took everything from me. You're lying." Sarah's voice cracked painfully. "You know more than you're saying. I've already lost one son. I won't lose another. Tell me what you know." Klein shrank back further, eyes wide with fear. "You don't understand," he whispered urgently, his voice almost frantic. "It's cursed. No one can help you." Sarah broke down, sobbing bitterly as Klein shut the door, leaving her standing broken and alone on his doorstep. Rumors flew after her confrontation spread, deepening suspicion against Klein and stirring the town's paranoia further. Alan returned late to the station, exhausted and burdened. On his desk waited a small box labeled Leo Foster. He opened it slowly, discovering dozens of Polaroid photos the police had recovered from a hidden spot near Wonder World's entrance. Alan examined each carefully, studying Leo's images with intense scrutiny. Most captured simple scenes, the trio smiling, joking nervously. But the deeper Alan looked, the more sinister details emerged. Figures hidden in shadows, indistinct silhouettes behind the teens. Alan's breath quickened, his chest tightening painfully. One image stood out, a photograph clearly showing Mike, Anna, and Leo smiling nervously, completely unaware of a blurred figure standing directly behind them. Alan stared intently at the indistinct shape. The uniform matched the shadowy figure from the security footage exactly. Alan's pulse thudded anxiously. The case was spiraling further into darkness, becoming dangerously personal. Every lead unraveled into more confusion. Alan felt haunted by his failures, weighed down by the thought of Sarah Thompson's tortured eyes, the pain of unanswered questions, and the threat of history repeating itself. 2 days passed. Richmond's tension escalated further. Businesses closed early, streets emptied by dusk, neighbors locked doors tight against imagined horrors. Alan felt an immense weight on his shoulders, desperate for clarity. Then, late one afternoon, Alan received a frantic call. "Detective Cooper, you need to come to Wonder World immediately." The officer's voice shook with urgency. "Something's happening." Alan sped toward the park, heart hammering with dread. When he arrived, officers clustered anxiously at the entrance. Alan pushed through, his breath caught sharply. Standing near the rusted gates, her body covered in scratches and bruises, stood Anna Coleman, shaking violently, eyes wide with terror. Alan approached cautiously, heart aching at her fragile state. "Anna," he spoke gently, reaching out. Slowly. Anna didn't acknowledge him, rocking slightly, repeating a desperate whisper. "Don't let him come back. Don't let him come back." Alan's blood ran cold. He gently grasped Anna's trembling arms, trying to calm her. "Anna, please, who are you talking about? Who can't come back?" Anna's blue eyes stared through Alan, wide with unspoken terror. Her voice grew frantic, more desperate. "He's still there. He never left. Don't let him come back." Alan felt panic rise, desperation clawing at his chest. He steadied his voice, trying again. "Anna, please, who can't come back, Anna?" But Anna's eyes widened further, horror overwhelming her. She opened her mouth, but no words emerged. Her body trembled violently, eyes glazing over as shock gripped her completely. Alan held her gently, frustration and dread churning inside him. The mystery deepened painfully, shadow figures lingering unseen, answers slipping farther away. As Alan stood holding Anna's fragile, terrified form, a bitter realization settled heavily upon him. Richmond was not just haunted by rumors or paranoia. Something real, something dangerously dark, was hidden deep within Wonderworld. He looked once more toward the park, its shadows lengthening ominously as night fell again. "Who can't come back, Anna?" Alan whispered helplessly, already knowing no answer would come tonight. Anna didn't respond, her body shuddering softly against him. The silence that followed was more terrifying than words could ever be. Anna Coleman sat alone in the sterile hospital room, her slender body small against the whiteness surrounding her. Her golden hair lay disheveled, strands clinging to the bruises and scrapes on her pale face. Her usually bright blue eyes now stared blankly into empty space, dark circles beneath them from exhaustion and trauma. Doctors had gently patched her wounds, but none could heal the deeper injuries, the invisible scars that now haunted her mind. Since Detective Alan Cooper had found her trembling and nearly catatonic outside Wonderworld, Anna had hardly spoken. When she did, it was only in whispers, broken fragments filled with fear. Now, curled protectively in the hospital bed, Anna Kara, rose only in whispers, broken fragments filled with fear. Now, curled protectively in the hospital bed, Anna struggled desperately to remember, her mind clawing through scattered memories. She recalled stepping into the darkness with Mike and Leo, the rusted rails of the roller coaster towering above, the whispering shadows, and then nothing. The gap frightened her more than anything. Anna clenched her fists weakly, fighting. Tears of frustration. The pieces were there, somewhere. She just needed to find them. Detective Alan Cooper sat quietly in the hospital waiting area, his heart heavy. Anna's fragile condition haunted him. The vacant, terrified look in her eyes reminded him too clearly of other victims he had failed to help in the past. Sarah Thompson's anguished face flashed through his mind again. How could he return to her without answers? Alan knew Anna was the key, but she was lost within herself. Beside Alan rested Anna's battered journal, recovered at the scene. Its edges were frayed, pages stained from dirt and tears. Alan opened it gently, reading carefully through her hurried, anxious handwriting. Each page revealed fragments of the bright, thoughtful girl Anna had once been, a girl whose world had now been shattered. But midway through, Alan's blood chilled as the entries changed dramatically. The handwriting became frantic, almost desperate. Anna wrote obsessively about shadows following them, voices whispering warnings, eyes watching from the dark. One phrase repeated chillingly on multiple pages. James was here. Alan's heart tightened painfully at the implications. James Thompson had vanished years ago. Was Anna delusional, or had she truly seen him? Alan turned the page slowly, finding one final, trembling note. He never left the park. He's still waiting. Alan closed the journal softly, his breathing ragged. The diary was a window into Anna's troubled mind, and perhaps something much darker, determined to find answers. Alan left the hospital, driving straight to Randall Evans' modest home. Randall answered the door warily, eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What now, detective?" he asked bitterly. Alan entered calmly, confronting Randall with controlled intensity. "I need the truth, Randall. Everything about Wonderworld, now." Randall hesitated, his jaw tight. Slowly, his expression shifted from anger to deep pain. "Sit down, detective," he finally whispered. "You're not ready for this." Alan listened intently as Randall recounted the nightmarish events of 1994, how Hugo Klein had secretly siphoned park funds, cutting corners on maintenance. That night, when the accident happened on the Cyclone, Klein was trying to silence an employee who knew too much. The coaster malfunction wasn't an accident, it was sabotage, Randall confessed bitterly, fists trembling. Alan leaned forward urgently. Who was the victim, Randall? Randall took a deep, ragged breath. My uncle. He worked there. He discovered Klein's theft. Klein made sure the truth died with him. Then he blamed me, fired me. He destroyed my family to save himself. Randall's voice broke, grief and rage mixing painfully. But it didn't end there. Klein covered everything up. Wonderworld wasn't haunted, detective. It was poisoned by lies and blood. Alan absorbed Randall's revelation silently, rage building in his chest. Hugo Klein had much to answer for. He stood abruptly, heading straight for Klein's isolated residence. Night had fallen again when Alan knocked forcefully on Klein's door. Klein answered, wary eyes widening slightly. Detective. Alan didn't wait, pushing his way inside. You lied to me, Alan growled fiercely. You killed an innocent man, blamed Randall Evans, and covered it all up. How many more lives need to be destroyed before you stop? Klein retreated, panic flashing across his pale face. You don't understand. It wasn't just me. His voice shook uncontrollably, his frail hands gripping Alan desperately. There's something darker there, detective. Evil lives beneath Wonderworld. I didn't start it. I just couldn't escape it. Alan stared, confused yet unsettled by Klein's palpable terror. What are you talking about? Klein's voice dropped to a frantic whisper. Something beneath the park is alive. It chose me, Randall's uncle, the Thompson boy, all of us. It wants more. You have to believe me. It feeds on fear, pain, and regret. Wonderworld belongs to it. Alan pulled back, disgusted and disturbed. Klein seemed delusional, yet Alan couldn't dismiss his genuine horror. Klein slumped into a chair, weeping softly, utterly broken. Alan stepped away, shaken by the haunting ambiguity of his words. Returning home later, Alan felt drained. He'd begun to believe he'd found the culprit, but now Klein's frightened warnings unsettled him deeply. He entered his darkened apartment, dropping into a chair, overwhelmed by the day's revelations. Just as exhaustion began to claim him, his phone buzzed suddenly, harshly startling him awake. He checked the message, his heart immediately pounding harder. The text came from an unknown number, simple yet chillingly precise. You still haven't seen everything. Find the door beneath the cyclone. Alan's breath caught painfully, the words piercing him like ice. Was it a trap, or was someone genuinely guiding him toward the truth? His thoughts spun chaotically. Klein's warnings echoed clearly. Something darker beneath Wonderworld. Anna's journal had hinted at the same malevolent presence. Randall had revealed Klein's crime, yet Alan sensed something more sinister, something dangerously hidden beneath the layers of betrayal and lies. Alan sat frozen, staring at the text. Wonderworld had claimed countless victims, leaving lives shattered, families grieving. Mike, Leo, James' innocence dragged into a dark mystery he still couldn't fully comprehend. Alan felt an overpowering responsibility pressing heavily upon him. He knew with absolute certainty he must return to Wonderworld and uncover whatever hid beneath the roller coaster. His career, his conscience, and his humanity demanded it. Across town, in her hospital bed, Anna suddenly stirred, eyes wide. In the darkened room, fragments finally began connecting painfully in her traumatized mind. The darkness, James's voice whispering warnings, something beneath the park, waiting patiently, hungrily. She sat upright, gasping sharply, clarity striking like lightning. Her voice trembled desperately into the silence. He's waiting beneath the park. He never left. In his apartment, Alan made his decision, gripping the message tightly, ready to face whatever darkness awaited him. But as he rose determinedly from his chair, preparing for the night ahead, he had no way of knowing how close he was to uncovering the terrible truth, one that would alter Richmond forever. His pulse raced steadily. Wonderworld awaited, shrouded in shadows and secrets, ready to reveal the final darkness hidden beneath this cyclone. Taking a deep breath, Alan steeled himself, knowing tonight could finally bring answers, or plunge them all deeper into nightmare. But one thing was painfully clear. Whatever awaited beneath Wonderworld was far worse than anything he had yet imagined. He stepped into the darkness, heart pounding, mind racing with possibilities. The text echoed ominously within him, louder than ever. You still haven't seen everything. Find the door beneath the cyclone. Rain poured relentlessly from the midnight sky, drenching Detective Alan Cooper as he stood at the rusted gates of Wonderworld. The storm battered Richmond with violent gusts, rattling the abandoned rides and whipping the overgrown weeds into frenzied dances. Flashes of lightning illuminated the park momentarily, casting grotesque shadows that writhed like living nightmares before fading swiftly into darkness. Alan's flashlight pierced through sheets of rain as he stepped cautiously into the park, each footstep sinking into muddy earth, his pulse hammering in rhythm with the rolling thunder overhead. Every inch of his body screamed at him to turn back. Yet Alan knew retreat wasn't an option, not tonight. The anonymous text echoed ominously in his mind. You still haven't seen everything. Find the door beneath the cyclone. The cyclone loomed ahead, its twisted metal frame creaking dangerously in the wind. Alan moved toward it, heart quickening. The roller coaster seemed alive, groaning and shuddering in protest against the storm, as if desperate to keep its dark secrets hidden. Alan climbed carefully over fallen debris and rotting wood to reach the coaster's base, scanning his flashlight along the structure. After several tense moments, the beam revealed a small hatch hidden beneath weeds and rusted tracks. His heart lurched violently. He knelt, gripping the rust-covered handle. After straining against years of disuse, the hatch creaked open slowly, revealing narrow stone steps descending into impenetrable darkness. Alan hesitated briefly, rain streaming down his face, then steeled himself and stepped downward into the suffocating blackness. Inside, the air immediately grew heavy and damp, smelling faintly of mold and decay. Alan's flashlight cast eerie reflections off slick stone walls, shadows leaping erratically with each shaky step. The staircase spiraled deeper beneath Wonderworld, becoming increasingly oppressive with every inch. Minutes passed in anxious silence until Alan finally emerged. into a wider passageway, a low tunnel carved crudely into the earth. His breathing quickened, anxiety tightening in his chest as he moved forward slowly. Senses heightened to every sound, every flicker of movement. Then, suddenly, his flashlight illuminated something utterly shocking. Chained to the walls, battered and pale, were Mike Thompson and Leo Foster. Alan's heart seized painfully, horror and relief colliding simultaneously. Both boys lifted their heads weakly, eyes hollow, faces gaunt from days of captivity. Mike. "Leo!" Alan gasped, rushing forward to help. Mike raised his head weakly, recognition flickering dimly in his weary eyes. "Detective Cooper," he croaked faintly. Alan knelt beside them, swiftly working to unchain their wrists. He felt an overwhelming rush of emotion, driven by both profound relief and fury at the cruelty inflicted upon them. "It's okay now," Alan reassured firmly, struggling to remain steady despite the deep ache in his chest. "We'll get you both out of here." Leo shivered violently, eyes wild with lingering fear. "She's coming back," he whispered hoarsely. "She never stops talking about him, about James." Alan froze briefly, dread gripping him again. "Who, Leo? Who's coming back?" A loud, manic laugh suddenly echoed through the darkness, slicing sharply through Alan's nerves. He spun around frantically, flashlight trembling in his hand. Emerging from the shadows stood Jenny Howard, her eyes wide and wild with madness. Her voice trembled with chilling excitement. "James told me he loved me, detective. Promised he'd never leave. But he lied." Alan tensed, stepping protectively between Jenny and the boys. "Jenny, it's over. Let them go." Jenny shook her head fiercely, pacing slowly, her voice rising steadily into hysteria. "James wanted to leave me. I couldn't let him. So I kept him here, safe, hidden away. He couldn't abandon me down here." Alan's heart sank with horror as he realized the twisted truth behind Jenny's words. He turned his flashlight deeper into the chamber, gasping sharply at what he saw: the mummified remains of James Thompson, seated upright against the wall, preserved grotesquely in this underground tomb. Mike suddenly saw the horrific sight clearly. A strangled cry tearing from his throat. "James, no." Mike sobbed helplessly, grief and shock overwhelming him. Jenny's voice turned venomous, her gaze fixed obsessively on James's lifeless form. "I did everything for him. He promised me forever. Then these three came, threatening to take him away again. I couldn't let that happen." Alan's rage ignited fiercely. "You destroyed innocent lives for a sick obsession. It ends now." Jenny lunged toward him with unexpected strength, her frail frame fueled by madness. Alan struggled fiercely, flashlight clattering to the ground, plunging them into darkness punctuated only by flashes of lightning from above. They grappled desperately, Jenny clawing wildly, shrieking with insanity-driven fury. "You can't take him from me. He's mine," she screamed, nails raking Alan's face painfully. Alan fought relentlessly, determined to overpower her and protect the boys. Finally, he pinned her to the ground, managing to secure handcuffs tightly around her wrists. Jenny writhed beneath him, screaming hysterically, voice echoing hauntingly through the cavern, breathing raggedly. Alan rose shakily, retrieving his flashlight. His face burned from fresh scratches, his body trembling with exhaustion. Jenny sobbed incoherently on the ground, sanity completely shattered. Suddenly, a deafening crack echoed from above, followed by rushing water cascading violently into the underground chamber. Alan realized instantly the storm had triggered. A flash flood, rapidly filling the cavern. Cold water surged upward, soaking Alan's feet instantly. Panic surged through him. He scrambled toward Mike and Leo, frantically helping them stand. Both boys staggered weakly, barely able to support themselves. The water rose swiftly, swirling aggressively around their legs. Alan grabbed Leo's arm, Mike gripping tightly to Alan's shoulder. Barely standing upright, Jenny thrashed helplessly in the water, handcuffed and trapped. Alan hesitated briefly, conflicted by his duty, but swiftly grabbed Jenny, lifting her roughly despite her screams of protest. The flooding chamber quickly became a death trap, the violent current pulling relentlessly downward. Alan's flashlight flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows against rising water. Alan shouted desperately, guiding the terrified boys and Jenny toward the staircase, each step now slick and dangerously submerged. "Hurry!" Alan urged frantically, muscles burning from effort and strain. Mike stumbled painfully, exhaustion threatening to overtake him. "I can't," he gasped weakly. "You can." Alan shouted fiercely, gripping Mike tightly. "We'll get out. Together." Water crashed louder behind them, rapidly consuming the passageway. Their breaths turned frantic, hearts hammering with pure terror as survival became uncertain. Alan reached desperately upward, grasping slippery stone as torrents of floodwater cascaded relentlessly into their path, darkness consuming their vision. Completely in that terrifying instant, Alan knew clearly this nightmare wasn't over yet. Every ounce of strength, courage, and desperation surged through him, propelling them forward despite impossible odds. Yet the flooding intensified violently, drowning out all thoughts except primal survival. Alan's voice roared desperately above. Deafening waves of rushing water, the cavern collapsing around them. "We have to get out now, or we're all going to die." Cold, violent water surged into the cavern, swirling around their waists, pulling relentlessly at Detective Alan Cooper, Mike, Leo, and a still frantic Jenny Howard. Alan fought to maintain his grip on the flashlight, its flickering beam there, only guide through the oppressive darkness. The roaring floodwaters thundered against stone walls, the sound deafening and relentless, matched only by the panicked pounding of Alan's heart. "Keep moving," Alan shouted desperately, pulling Mike upward with every ounce of strength he possessed. The teenager's weight sagged heavily against him, his exhaustion evident in trembling limbs. Leo stumbled behind them, grasping Alan's shirt. Weakly, gasping in short, pained breaths, Jenny struggled furiously, still bound, shrieking incoherently, her voice swallowed by the rushing torrent. Alan held her fiercely by one arm, refusing to let her be lost to the merciless flood. She had caused unspeakable pain, but justice, not revenge, must prevail. Water rapidly rose to their chests, icy cold numbing muscles and stealing precious breath. Alan's mind screamed warnings of defeat, yet determination drove him onward. They reached the narrow stone stairs, now slick and slippery, submerged and treacherous. "Go," Alan ordered, forcing Mike ahead. Just a little further. Mike weakly climbed upward, every step agony, his body trembling violently from fatigue. Leo clung to Mike, face pale, eyes wide with terror. Alan pushed Jenny forward, muscles burning intensely, pain radiating sharply with each movement. The floodwater chased them relentlessly, pulling hungrily at their bodies. The stairs twisted endlessly, the rising water almost at their throats. Alan's mind blurred with desperation, the simple act of breathing becoming nearly impossible. Just as hope faded, faint voices suddenly pierced through the chaos above rescue teams, shouting urgently into the storm. Renewed strength surged through Alan. "Here!" he screamed hoarsely, voice nearly drowned by the roaring flood. "We're down here." Bright light sliced downward from above, illuminating their frantic faces. "Hold on." A voice yelled powerfully, resonating with authority and assurance. Ropes descended swiftly, rescue workers skillfully securing the exhausted group one by one. Alan felt strong hands lift him and the others from the watery darkness, pulling them into the stormy yet open air above. The cold rain was almost gentle compared to the nightmare below. His lungs drew deep, desperate breaths, relief washing over him in overwhelming waves. Flashing emergency lights bathed Wonderworld in vibrant reds and blues, illuminating the faces of dozens of rescuers and officers rushing urgently around the collapsed coaster. Alan leaned heavily against an ambulance, watching with drained eyes as Mike and Leo were gently loaded onto stretchers, oxygen masks soothing their tortured breaths. Nearby, Jenny was placed carefully into custody, her manic screams reduced to boos. Incoherent whispers. Alan closed his eyes briefly, a shuddering breath escaping him, finally allowing himself to accept the painful reality. This nightmare had truly ended. Across the park, behind police barriers, anxious families waited desperately. Sarah Thompson's eyes locked onto Mike's stretcher as medics wheeled him toward the ambulance. Her heart nearly stopped, a mixture of joy, grief, and utter relief crashing powerfully through her. "Mike!" she cried, running forward, embracing him gently yet fiercely, tears streaming openly down her face. Mike reached weakly toward her, his own tears blending with the relentless rain, releasing years of buried anguish. "I'm sorry, Mom," he sobbed quietly. "I saw James. He's gone." Sarah embraced him tighter, heart shattering and healing simultaneously. "I know," she whispered brokenly. "It's okay, sweetheart. He can rest now." Leo's family gathered. Similarly, their emotional reunion echoing deeply into the stormy night. Around them, Richmond residents silently wept, relief mingled with sorrow as the tragic revelations unfolded fully. In the weeks after the rescue, Richmond openly mourns James Thompson and demolishes this sinister Wonderworld, determined to bury its dark legacy. Detective Alan Cooper, still recovering, struggles with lingering trauma until the town's gratitude helps lift his burden. Visiting a healing Anna Coleman, he sees her fear giving way to strength, while Mike Thompson channels his grief into community programs that honor his brother's memory. Standing later on the now empty lot where the park once stood, Alan reflects on how confronting hidden evil has freed the town and himself, realizing that even the deepest shadows can give way to enduring light.